As I mentioned on the previous episode, I had made a bit of a switch kind of back towards a camera system which I was using previously. I have a bit of a weird camera history. I was Canon to start with, talking digitally here. Canon to start with, and then Sony was introduced kind of into the mix, but not really. I made a pretty committed movement towards Fuji a couple of years ago, and I think it's a couple of years ago now, time flies, and my wife didn't get on with Fuji. She wanted to go to Sony. So after a couple of months of a very expensive switch to Fuji, we made another expensive switch to Sony, and I miss the Fujis greatly, but you do what your wife tells you to do. That's how the world works. And ever since, I've really missed using the Fuji system, especially from a personal sort of camera point of view. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, I actually went and got myself one of my dream cameras, which is the X Pro 3. I was very excited about that. I've been excited about that since it was announced. It's very rare that I care about gear, and I was very excited about that. So we're going to start off talking about Fuji. But let's just do a very quick recap. Everyone should have listened to the first episode with you in, but give us a brief rundown of who you are as a photographer.
Well, I am Jason Hunter. I'm from Chesapeake, Virginia, which is like a small town. Well, not really town, but a little city between Norfolk, Virginia and Virginia Beach. I shoot anything that really catches my eye. I don't really have a particular thing that I go after too much, or really a style of any kind. So I'm just a hobbyist. I was mainly shooting film for the last like 5-ish years or so. And then now I found my way back to digital, and the Fuji system has been wonderful. So yeah, that's it. I'm kind of a boring photographer. I don't, and none of my photos have people in them. I don't like people in my photos. So I'm not like a street photographer, but I like to be out on the streets. Right. So
you're kind of an architectural photographer, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, a little. I've gotten that before because I like sharp edges and lines. Mm-hmm. So I gravitate towards like corners of buildings a lot. And I noticed this a couple years ago. Like I would get a roll of film back, and there'd be like 3 or 4 photos of just a corner. So I've kind of leaned into that more lately over like the last, I don't know, year or so. I even had like a little book. It was a crappy little zine.
I've got it up here.
Threw together.
I've got it over here on my wall.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a supporter.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I wish I had like thought more about it, and if I would have like really did it, I could have made everything the same, and then that way it fits better. Mm-hmm. So and just had more. I don't know.
Well, that's the joys of photography, right? Or any creativity is just constantly being miserable about decisions that you made 30 seconds ago. That's why we do it. It's just so we can be miserable about how bad we are at something that we're trying really hard at. Let's start off with Fuji. That's because there's an interesting sort of parallel going on with film photographers, and then if they do venture into digital, they do tend to go for Fuji. So, as you said, you're someone that was shooting film for about 5 years, and you've found your way back to digital. What particularly about Fuji did you want to move across to?
Well, I think so Sony had caught my eye, and I was really like thinking about getting a Sony, but the problem that I saw from people that like I trust that shoot with Sony cameras is that they feel like more like a piece of tech than a camera itself. So like the menus are all like hard to get through, navigate. The image quality is stellar, but sometimes the colors are off. And with Fuji there's this like, 99% of the time that the colors are going to look right. The cameras have manual feel to them. Pretty much all their lenses have an aperture dial on them. So when I first got mine, I was shooting it completely manual, and now I've kind of like went back to shooting digital way, where I'm just in aperture priority mode and I let the camera do whatever it wants. And I've noticed that like there's a Fuji X Weekly. I don't know if you've heard of them. Mm-hmm. They make the film sims.
Yeah, they've got the app that you can kind of go through and do the recipes with. Yeah.
Yeah. And like recently I've discovered the Fuji Raw Studio. I don't know if you played around with this, but if you plug your camera into your computer, you can go through there, and if you have a raw file and you have those Fuji X files, like the film sims loaded up in there, you can go through and select them and like kind of see which each film sim would look like before you commit to it.
Well, I mean, but since I picked my one up, I had the XT3. I had a few XT3s, and at one point I had an XT2, but that was kind of standalone. I really like the XT3s for work. I think that they're the good compromise between, like you said, Sony's make you miserable. I shoot Sony. I'm not being like a dick that's like attacking a side that I don't have anything to do with. I literally yesterday took 3,000 photos on the Sony. I've done 20 weddings or so far this year on Sonys. For work, right. They're brilliant. Once you really get through the Japanese internment camp menu system, which is just torture, once you actually get your head around it and you limit your interaction with it, they can be fantastic cameras for kind of getting out of your way, but they absolutely don't make you want to shoot. Like one thing I noticed with this, in particular on like Instagram, if you look at people that shoot Sonys, they spend all of their time doing like self-portraits with their cameras to prove that they're photographers. It's like a status symbol. It's not like, they think it's edgy and cool. They're not really pushing any sort of envelope with photography. They're just underexposing a load of shitty portraits and then bringing all of the detail back with the dynamic range in the RAWs. With Fuji, it makes you want to go out and shoot. And kind of in the same way, I adopted film last year, and I'm an absolute baby with it. I'm terrible with film photography. I'm having fun with it, but I'm not good at it. But what I liked about film and what keeps growing on me is the lack of post work you have to do. Once you've developed and you've scanned, that's the photo. It feels a lot more honest. It feels a lot more truthful, especially I photograph a lot of people. That's a very dishonest business overall. And with the Fuji, what I'm doing is I've got one card set to RAW, one card set to JPEGs. So far, I haven't touched a RAW file. I've liked every JPEG that I've taken off of the camera. The options that you've got in terms of like the film sims and the little tweaking of the highlights and shadows and the grain and so on make it just such a fun camera to use. And it's literally made me go out for walks in bad weather at night. I literally got kicked out of a part of town I was in last week at like 2 a.m. because I was out taking pictures of buildings, and I guess they thought I was some kind of like Fuji terrorist that was out scoping the place out in some like shitty nowhere town in England, that I was going to go and do something really evil with a Fuji camera, whatever, I don't know. But that's what I like about the Fuji. It feels like it's you focus on the shooting and then you have a photo and that's it. It's all done in the process, so you can focus on being a photographer rather than being like a guy sat in front of his laptop being miserable.
Yeah, and it's cool because like if you go into Lightroom, if you shoot RAW, if you decide to shoot RAW, you go into Lightroom, all the regular film like Classic Chrome, Eterna, all that's still there. So you can pick those later if you decide to. Like this month, I decided all month I'm just going to shoot nothing but black and white. Mm-hmm. And if I put in this Tri-X, it doesn't really look like Tri-X. I mean, he says it's Tri-X looking, but after looking at so many Tri-X photos, it's like a little off. It's a little too clean, I feel like.
Right.
And kind of too smooth. But anyways, like I've loaded up that, and now all this month, I'm just going to shoot black and white JPEGs all month long and see kind of what I get. And it's nice, like you said, like, cause it's like a happy medium. Like I'm shooting digital, but I'm also like kind of getting the feeling of why I liked film. Mm-hmm. And like, I got to tone back some of like how I've been shooting. Cause like with a roll of film, you only get 36 shots or less if you're shooting like 120. And now I'll come home and I'll have like 50 pictures. And I'm like, well, if I was shooting film, I wouldn't have shot 50 photos. I would have shot 36. And I'm realizing that those extra like 14 or whatever are kind of garbage. So I gotta get back to like the mindset of like making every photo count. Right. And with digital, you really don't have to do that. I got unlimited amount of photos in here.
Well, isn't the trick for that? You can go and get like a 1 gigabyte card.
Yeah.
And then like that literally is limiting you to so few pictures.
Yeah, I did that. I had like, I think it was 8 gigabytes, but they were really slow. And I shoot the same RAW plus JPEG. So I have one card with RAW, one card with JPEG in it. And like the load speeds were so slow. Like you would take a picture and you're like, all right, well, here it goes. And it's like thinking and then it goes. So then I just put back to ScanDisk, like Extreme Pros or whatever they're called, 64 gig cards. And I just been happy with those. So
I don't want to be too controversial. That would be terrible for someone like me to be. But why the move away from film? And I think we're probably going to go on a bit of a deep dive here. But film is in. I keep getting told it's in an ascendancy. I feel like it's starting to taper at the top. I feel like we're getting to the point where it's about as popular as it can be with regards to like the feasibility, the costs and so on for the industry at large. So what in particular about film did you, I don't want to make this sound bad, but did you want to move away from?
Oh, mainly just like the cost. It's just it's so expensive. And then there's nothing wrong with, I think, well, when I first started shooting film, you could go on eBay and you could find whatever you want for a couple $100. But now it's like, well, if you want a RB67, it would have cost you $300 a couple of days ago, a year ago or so. And now it's like almost $900. Like everything's doubled. The price of film's gone up. Some film stocks are no longer with us, sadly, like 400H. Not that I shot that a lot, but it's you're starting to see like, I don't know. If I spend, and digital's not cheap either, so I don't want to make it sound like it's cheap, because I could buy a lot of film and a really nice film camera for what I paid for my XT4, the 35 f1.4 and the 56 f1.2. Like that's like, I don't know, it's like $3,500, you know, something like that in that range. And that's a lot of Portrait 400. And you know, so it's not like any cheaper, but like it's not, for me, I just kind of wanted to get away from it for a while and see how I like this. And I didn't expect to like this camera as much as I did, because I had a D750 before this. I came from Nikon. I was a Canon guy. Then I went to Nikon and I went to Fuji. And when my D750 got older, I was like, oh, I need something new. So I got this, and I never touched my D750 for like personal work. And now I'm finding like, well, I'll just grab this. And then I come home and the pictures are okay. And I'm like, well, this didn't cost me, you know, $20 in film and another $20 to develop it. I saved $40 this week.
Yeah.
So I kind of moved away from it. And I don't know how long, because there's like a finite amount of film cameras.
Right.
So as popular as it gets, as it keeps going, they're all going to get bought up. And then if you want one, you're going to have to pay the market value. And, you know, with demand going high, the prices go high. And it's not this, it is, because you can still get something cheap. Like some of the better cameras are still going under the radar, like the Nikon FE. I think that's one of my favorite film SLRs ever. It's got the best on and off switch ever, because it's just a film lever, and if you pull it out a little bit, the camera turns on. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful camera. But anyways, you can still get one of them for pretty cheap, and you can still get like Fuji Superior film for cheap and shoot film for cheap. But if you want to get into it, and you're like, well, I'm looking to upgrade and get something a little nicer, and I want a Contax, you know, or Rolleiflex or anything like that, the prices are just higher and higher. And with them, like film YouTubers, anytime they mention a camera, the prices go up, because they're like, oh, I gotta have this one.
That drives me insane, honestly. It really fucking annoys me, because it's like, you already have the problem of there being, it's a sparse market. Like you said, there's only a finite number of cameras around. And then I don't really know. It's kind of like scorching the earth a little bit, right? Because you get the camera at the price. If you're, you know, popular photographer A that's on YouTube, I don't want to say names because I sound like I'm picking on someone, but if you're a particular popular photographer and you buy a camera and it's at the price it is today, so let's say it's $500. Let's just throw a random number out. And then you make a video out of it, it's going to be like, I don't know, $750. Literally, by the time that people have seen the videos, I don't think people are even watching the videos. I think people literally see the title and it will say, you know, RB67, and they're going straight onto eBay to Google, to go straight onto eBay or Google to find somewhere like either their local camera store or eBay or whatever to find their own one of that. And then that demand then pushes the price up. The people, it all feels like this whole idea of like a community is kind of, it's a wonderful word for not what it is. It's a very self-serving thing to do, because you get to kind of brag about what you bought and that you didn't have to pay that much for it. And at the same time, drive up the market, drive up the prices and piss off people that were looking for one previously. I don't know. It seems like a very funny system.
Yeah. And like, well, it's weird because with digital, because you could say the same for digital. Like if I see, when I was looking to buy a Fuji camera and I'm like, oh, what 35 millimeter lens do I want? And they're like, well, there's the 7 Artisans and there's the Fuji f1.4 and the f2, but the f2 is like faster autofocus and has weather sealing, but like the f1.4 has magic to it. And I'm like, okay, well, I went to f1.4. That's like the lens I want. I went on eBay, I watched YouTube videos, and then I bought it. The problem is that you can just go into any Best Buy or B&H or Adorama and get that lens. And there's like plenty of supply. So there's the problem with film is there's just not that supply. So it's not, I don't know if it's the fault of the YouTube guys. It's just how it is. There's just not enough cameras to go around. And then ultimately it's either going to be, I feel like it's almost to the point now, and I felt this like way for like about a year or two now with prices going up. It's almost like a status thing.
Right.
Like the RZ67 used to be that. That was like the camera that people that were popular shot with. Everybody wanted one. And then they're like, I have to have an RZ. So when I got my RB67, everybody's like, well, this camera's like 75% is good and costs $300. And you know, it's not gonna break. It's got no electronics in it or anything like that. So that's what I went with. And there used to be like cheaper options, but now like even like cheaper things like K1000s are going for expensive amounts, and OM3s and or OM2s and OM4s, they're like getting expensive. So I don't know. There's only so many models of cameras that you can pick from. And the good thing about film is like when you look at a film camera, like of course, like different lenses have different characteristics, but for the most part, if you put Portra 400 in like one SLR and you put it in another, you're going to get like the same photos.
Yeah.
If everything's like it doesn't matter if it's Canon or Nikon or whatever. So it's a little easier to be like, I want this, and then I want this look, so I put this film in it. Or digital, when you're shopping around, it's like, it's kind of hard because I film photography has certain cliches and I love them. Like I love the old classic cars. I love the grainy look. I love the high contrasty black and whites. So when you're shooting for like shopping for digital, it's like, I don't know, it's harder. So the voices in the film community seem a little bit more unified, where they're all kind of chasing the same thing. They're all kind of shooting the same thing, especially if they're all like in San Francisco or New York or wherever they're at. Or even like shooting mountains and wildlife photography, not wildlife, but landscape photography and things like that. And they all tend to shoot the same cameras and take the same kind of photos. And then everybody's like, well, I want to do that, so I'm going to go get this camera. And it's just, there's just not enough supply to match that demand.
Well, I mean, you're talking about like cliches of the film world. And one thing I have seen come up lately is, I think it's called Analog Repeat. It's a very funny little meme page on those cliches of film photography. And one thing that does seem to have come out of that, at least from my observation, is that for the most part, people seem to be taking it on the chin and being able to laugh at themselves. And, you know, I've had people take the piss out of my photos, and when they're funny, they're funny. It's like, you've got a point. And I understand maybe for some people, it can sting a little bit when someone says something about something you created. But one thing I have certainly noticed is that there does seem to be some people, maybe some of the bigger names within the film community, that aren't doing such a good job at maybe not taking that too seriously. And they're getting a little bit too caught up in their own feelings about being put on the spot, I guess, or being made light of, especially when they are just out there, you know, making kind of cliche photos, which, you know, it's not a false accusation. It's what you're doing. You kind of just have to own it. And, you know, I've had people say to me, like, if I photograph models, they're like, oh, you know, how hard is it to photograph someone that's good looking? It's like, well, yeah, that's a pretty fair point. Like, they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I mean, you can make a good looking person look pretty bad with a camera, but for the most part, you know, a good looking person does the heavy lifting. If you photograph flowers are generally good looking. So the flower is doing an awful lot of heavy lifting for you. You have to still do your part, but it's a fair kind of, not accusation, but it's a fair observation. So it's kind of strange to me that this film community, which seems to be more and more, you're seeing certain people rise up out of it and get more and more notoriety and more attention. And they seem to be the ones that maybe aren't the best at laughing at themselves, if that sounds fair. Yeah,
well, like I used to follow that account, and whoever they are that runs it, I thought it was funny. They got a little like too personal for me. Like some of the things, not like towards like me or like things like that, but like how they were like talking about people got like a little too
right
personal, and they're like too much of a dick about it. So I'm like, I don't really support that account anymore. Because there's like one thing, like you're saying, like putting them together in a collage and taking a jab at somebody, and it's like genuinely true. It's true and it's funny. But another thing is like calling some dude's wife a bitch and things like that. And like,
okay, right. Well, like, I haven't seen anything like that. If there's stuff like that, that's just not okay.
That was with Joe Greer. Like he, like this, whoever runs that account hates Joe Greer. And a lot of people hate Joe Greer, but I think that what you have to take away from somebody like Joe Greer is not going to listen to this. So I'll say whatever I want about him. But the thing is, Joe Greer is an excellent marketer. Like he's good at marketing himself, and he's good at making himself out to be this, like, I don't know. It's almost like he's got a persona. Yeah. And this is it. I'm gonna wear vintage clothes and wear these sunglasses. I'm gonna shoot with Leica. I'm gonna shoot these types of photos. Me and my wife are gonna travel around to these hotels like he was doing. But like, hey, like that's his thing and it worked for him. And I'm pretty sure that most people would be like, well, you know, you can travel around with your wife and take pictures of hotels with your Leica, and people are gonna pay you money to do it. Most people would be like, okay, yeah, sure. Right. You just got to keep that like social media presence. So I think that's like his like business model. I don't see Joe. I see Joe Greer more of a businessman than a photographer. And I don't know if that's a knock to him, but that's just kind of how I view somebody like him. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like he's a better businessman than I am. Right. For sure. So, cause like, if you shoot weddings and things like that, and some people are just genuinely better at like marketing themselves. Right. And like we have a lady around here. Her name's Caitlin James. She's a photographer. She's awesome. But like everything about her and her persona is like picture perfect. They have like little white dogs. She wears these like dresses. Her photos are light and airy. She gets to fucking take pictures of these like $10,000 venues and stuff like that. Like, of course her photos are good. She's got like beautiful couples and beautiful venues. Like, no shit. Like her stuff's gonna look good. But that's how she's marketed herself, and that's how she's like able to charge $15,000-$20,000 for a wedding, because they know like they already got the money to make that look a reality, where it's just not the same for everybody.
Isn't that the case now? I mean, I look at the digital side of things, and like with YouTube, you know, there's plenty of, you know, there's plenty of photographers that are making money out of photographers, not making money out of photography. Like Frono's photo, I couldn't tell you a single photo that he's ever taken. I guarantee most, if not all of his audience couldn't pick one out of a lineup if it wasn't a picture of someone that appears on the channel or something that has happened on the channel. But he's made his money from selling shit, either reviews or whatever, to photographers, for basically for people that just like that kind of repetition. And I know now I sound like I'm taking shots, but it's safety. Oh, no, it's safety blanket entertainment. It's like I like, you know, I'll say soccer because you guys can't name your sports correctly. Let's say with soccer, you get people that will just listen to aimless bullshit talked by people that have no authority on something. They don't know anything. They've never done anything in that field. But because it's talking about a subject that you find comforting or fun, or it takes your mind off of the bullshit that the real world has become, you just absorb that media at great length. And when you apply ad space to people just absorbing enormous amounts of trash media, that makes that person appear successful. And that by successful, we automatically, because of how the past has sort of worked, think that someone's an expert because they're successful. And they're not necessarily an expert. They're just a voice that people can be bothered to continuously listen to. And I think that film inevitably was going to have people rise up out of it who are good at the fucking 3-point YouTube lighting that everyone does that drives me fucking insane, because it's just like, yeah, we've seen a YouTube video now. We know how to do, you know, a little kicker light, your main light, and a little bit of fill. We know how to do that now, thanks. Make sure there's a practical in there in the background that's warm so that you can have it slightly out of focus so that everyone can look at the bokeh of your Sony or your whatever. Like, You got to talk about your coffee because everyone gives a shit about your coffee. Like, you got to tell people about how you have some really obscure coffee that's made out of like yak shit and it takes you 3 days to pour it over your artisan fucking glass pour, whatever. There's so much of this that is clearly all icing and very, very little cake. And it's comforting to people and people will enjoy that. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But I think the issue comes, like you said, there's a difference between someone that's good at business and someone that's good at what their business is. Like I know plenty of people that are very, very good at marketing themselves. They're the best at lying about themselves online. And then you have the people that are very good at what they do, but they are awful at marketing themselves, especially in a social media age. And you can't apply the expert sort of moniker to someone who's just good at pretending online. That's totally different to actually being an expert at something. And with the way that YouTube is, with the way that Instagram is, the people that are just better at lying online are going to be the ones that are more noticeable, and they're going to be the ones that are going to rise up above the others.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the Frono's photos is like spot on. Like, I guess like if you Google D5300 or whatever, 100%, I guarantee you, like one of his photos on like how to use the camera and things like that's going to pop up. And he's like a character, and people like character. That's why the Kardashians are popular. You know what I'm saying? Like these people are like the Kardashians of photography, and there's there's like almost a need for it too, because I like enjoying content like that. Not Frono's photos on one hand, but I like watching like, chill vibes music and B-roll of coffee being pulled. It's just, I enjoy it. I do.
It's safe. It's very safe.
It's safe. But when it comes to like, is this person going to teach me something? Probably not. But not that I wouldn't I'd rather find it out in a book. Like, I've been trying to get more photo books because I feel like there's more value in a photo book than there is in a YouTube video from like learning from like true masters of the craft. And if you're going to take it more serious, like, again, I'm just a hobbyist, so it's not like I'm trying to be the next Ansel Adams, but I guarantee there's some person out in Montana shooting large format film that's probably 60, 70 years old that knows everything there is about large format film, that could teach you everything, but they don't have an Instagram or a YouTube channel. They're just out there doing something that they love. And you could probably learn far more from them than you could somebody on YouTube. Yeah. So, but I think like, again, like Brian, you've had Brian on here, I think twice.
Right.
Brian Briggs, he'll be like straight up and say like, I don't know everything. I'm going to try to figure it out. And this is how it is. And I like that. I respect that. And I like that a lot more than somebody else that, proclaims that they're some kind of expert.
Yeah. And you have to always be concerned about, and concerned, I don't want to say you have to be concerned like it has to keep you up at night, but you should always be, I wish people were more critical. One thing I've done with my wife is a very positive person and I'm an extremely negative person. And I don't want to make her a negative person. Like, I think it's a blessing to not be constantly miserable. I think that's a real blessing. If your default position is to be positive about the world, that should be protected. If you know someone that is like that and you're not like that, you should protect them from feeling like you do. But one thing I've really tried with her is to make her more cynical, to make her more proactive in realizing how much bullshit there is, or realizing, look for the signs of certain things not being what they're being proclaimed to be. And it's actually funny. We talked about this a little while ago. You mentioned the lady in your area. One of the things that I've noticed quite a bit is that the I don't want to say like the celebrity of photography, but like the notoriety of photographers on somewhere like YouTube seems to split in terms of gender with for the most part, obviously nothing is everything because this isn't communist Russia. There is actually a little bit of gray area, but the guys are like the cool, whatever, we're just going to smoke some weed, drink some coffee, whatever, like we're so laid back. It's so easy. Come and hang out. We're just friends. And the women are like, this is how you can make more money out of photography. This is how you can reach more clients. This is how you can get bookings secured faster. This is how you can grow your business. And it's so bizarre because you would think through a century of gender stereotypes, that it would be the guys that would be pushing for the monetary side of things, and it would be the women that were pushing for the artistic side of things, or to come across as more friendly.
Yeah, I was asking my wife who's the lady she likes on YouTube, but you're right. This is no knock to any man, especially you who do weddings, but when it comes to like looking at content on YouTube to find out like how to shoot weddings and pose people, I'm 100%, not 100%. Nothing's like you said, nothing's 100%. But like most of the time, I'm watching a woman teach me how to pose people and do things, because I don't want to say I don't like, because there's probably somebody I like. Most of the time when I see wedding photography, and not that I'm some big wedding photographer, I do it all the time, but when I see wedding photography that I really like, most of the time it's from a woman.
Yeah.
It seems like softer. It seems more intimate. It's light and airy. And I like that style, and a lot of them kind of have the same style and look.
Yeah.
And you're right. When you go on here, I cannot think of this lady's name, but my wife watches her all the time, but she's the same way. She's like, this is how you make business cards, and this is how you build your website and things like that. And I've watched tutorials on wedding photography, not wedding photography, but as a business when I first started. Right. And one of the biggest tips they gave was, when you meet someone who is a potential client, make sure you buy their coffee, so that they feel like you're on this like friendly level with them. And it's like, that's not a tip you would ever get from the male side of things, because the male side of things would be like, you got to make sure you got your 24-70, you got to make sure you got your 70-200, make sure you got all, like, it's always just fucking gear. And one of the things I actually got told was about making sure you have a nice car. A guy was telling me, like, well, if you ever turn up for a meeting with clients, make sure you got a nice car, because it gives the air of being like successful. And I just thought, I can't imagine anyone can give even the remotest shit about, like, they probably won't even notice what car you turn up in. And if they do, and it's that much of an issue for them, they're probably just not your clients. They're probably someone else's clients, and you should be happy with that. And it feels like, you've kind of said there that the majority of good wedding photography or great photography for weddings is done by women. And I think that's down to being less focused on gear and more focused on the actual overall aesthetic, like everything involved. There's a through line from how they photograph the venue, to how they photograph the shoes, to how they photograph the couple, to everything looks like it's taken a lot of thought to get to that end product. Whereas I seem to find that male wedding photography, and I know we're going on a weird tangent here, but it's more like war photography. It's like, you just got to get a fucking photo. Documentary.
Yeah, you just got to get a fucking photo while it's going on. Like, just fucking, like, it doesn't matter if it's a good one or if someone's blinking or if someone fell over. Just make sure you get a photo. Jesus Christ, don't get the wrong focal length. That's the most important thing. And with the women, it seems to be so much more thought out.
Yeah, because my wife is like I said, we might do like 2-3 weddings a year, something like that. So it's not like our business or anything like that. It's just like friends, family, people that like might need somebody, they know us, so we do it. But my wife is like 100% the boss. Like, she does everything from like talking to the people, to planning everything, to talking to the bride about styling and things like that. And then when I get there, I just shut up and do whatever she tells me to do, because she knows more than me when it comes to like how things should be aesthetically pleasing. And it's funny because like my wife will put everything together, and everything's like immaculate. Everything, like all the earrings are placed one way, and like the invitations here, and then we have this ribbon that she buys, and like these like silver trays that we put all the accessories on, and the shoes, everything's like done up, and it all looks the same. And then after the ceremony, and after we do like portraits of everybody and we're doing the reception, she lets me free. And like half the photos are like you said, they're like documentary style, harsh black and white. Yep. Like, it's just it's like our style completely changes when I'm allowed to do it myself, and I'm not focused on like the aesthetics of it. I am, but not like that. Like, I'm trying to like capture moments, and my wife's trying to make things pretty.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. And then I'm like, well, we're going to be in this, like, it's going to be dark out. So I need to at least have my, like you said, 24-70 f2.8. I got to have that. Maybe I'll get like a Cinebloom filter to blow out the highlights a little bit. Like I'm thinking about like the technical aspects. My wife's thinking about making pictures that are pretty and people would like.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a difference in like that. And then that's like, again, I don't want to repeat this. It's not for everybody's not this. And
oh no, I've seen some tragic female wedding photographers that are just woeful. And I've seen some, I mean, my favorite photographer of all time is a male wedding photographer. And he has just an unbelievably amazing through line of, he's found this perfect medium between street photography and fashion and applied it to weddings. And I think it looks phenomenal. I think that there isn't a right style for any kind of photography. Like that's the worst sort of mindset for people to get in. And that's something you see with a place like YouTube. You see, I mean, I can't stand these, like, which one of these should you buy or how you should do street photo. Like they sort of purport to be the authority on how something should or shouldn't be done or what you should or shouldn't buy, what the rules are or what they aren't and so on. That's the problem with somewhere like YouTube, is that it creates authority without intelligence.
I agree with that. I think there's a difference. If you're teaching somebody like the fundamentals and then and somebody doesn't know anything about photography and you're like, all right, well, this is how the rule of thirds work. Mm-hmm. This is how you should think about composition. This is how you should think about light and things like that. And then you take these tools and you're like, this is it. You can't really, I've always been told this, I don't know how true it is, but you can't really learn to kind of start breaking rules unless you understand them
100%
first.
Yeah.
So and some of these videos are like, oh, this is the best 3 techniques you should learn or some bullshit like that.
Yeah.
And it's like rule of thirds and composition and light and understanding aperture and things like that. There's that stuff needs to be said and taught on there. But like you said, like you're like some people, I think the biggest problem is just people acting like they're an authority on something when they're not.
Yeah. And
there just needs to be some kind of disclaimer like, hey, like I don't know everything, but this is what I've learned. I respect that a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Than this is just the way it is.
But it comes across to me like it's when someone has one of those videos where they show one of their photos and then they explain why it's so good. It's almost like when you get someone show you a histogram to explain why their photo's good. Like, right. It's like, it sounds more like you're trying to convince yourself than you're trying to convince me.
Yeah. I don't know how. I don't know. Cause I deleted my whole Instagram, not the whole thing, but I took all the pictures away and started over. Right. So then I'm like going back and I'm looking back and I'm like, these pictures suck. So I don't know. Like at the time, maybe I thought, I might have taken 10 good photos in my entire life that I could say I would stand for. But most of the time, I take photos and then 2 weeks later, these are shitty. I don't even know what I was thinking.
But that's a good thing. That's a good mentality to have, because it means that you're never, you're never going to be one of those people that's just like, hey, everyone, come and check out how fucking amazing my farts smell. Come and right. I'm this. I've done it. I've accomplished what I needed to because, I've done pictures of people wearing Halloween masks with smoke bombs, and I've done those teal and orange portraits where I underexposed by 5 stops or, whatever. You still have that kind of that ambition to do better. With the film community, and this is way more your area than mine, and I'm still kind of getting a bit of a gag reflex when I say film community, because for the most part, I haven't seen the community side of the film community. It tends to be a bunch of gatekeepers that are higher up the food chain that are extremely reliant on the lower end of the food chain constantly kissing their ass. And the minute that stops, they're almost hard done by. They're almost I don't know. It's very strange. I mean, I had one particular, okay, so I should probably be very transparent. I did have one particular incident where I was being asked repeatedly by about 4 or 5 people. I won't lie about the number of people and say, oh, everyone's been messaging me about such and such. It was about 4 or 5 people. That's the number one lie on YouTube. If I can teach everyone right now to be more cynical, anytime you hear someone say, everyone's been asking, they either mean literally no one's asked them, but they want to talk about it, or they mean maybe 5 people have asked them. That's the only possible outcome. They haven't had everyone ask them anything. That I hate that whole thing of
The hyperbole.
I'm just so in demand that literally there are people whose heartbeat stops if I don't talk about what I want to talk about. None of that. I had 4 or 5 people that kept bringing up a very, 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 very prominent film YouTuber, like one of the most prominent. And it would be such a great person to get on the podcast. Can you get him on the podcast? Can you get him on the podcast? This happened for a little while. In the end, I kind of folded. And it was during the first lockdown over here. I messaged this person and they informed me that it would cost me $200 an hour for me to speak with them for the podcast. At which point I actually just remember laughing quite a bit because I just thought that's like, it's so funny to have an appearance fee during a lockdown for like Zoom. Like, just don't do it. If you don't want to do it, just don't do it. It's pretty straightforward. So I do get the impression that the community side of film community isn't quite what people think it is. It's a lot of small fishes kissing a lot of big fishes' asses. And then you get like almost brand allegiance to particular YouTube or Instagram accounts that people are so in love with that particular person's work or their life aesthetic or the way they speak or whatever, that they get so behind them that they're you know, they can't do any wrong. I just wonder from your point of view, do you feel like there's the potential for the way that the film community kind of is at the moment, that it's going to push people away from film?
In some regards, yes. In other regards, no. Like there's a guy, he got all his stuff stolen. This has been like 6 months ago or something like that. And everybody banded together and like raised money to get him his stuff back. So when some people's like, oh, the film community is awesome, they're talking about stuff like that. And there's what I've noticed from Instagram is that if you preach community, people are more likely to be friendly and help others because they feel a part of something. Right. And Instagram, so look at me, listen to what I'm saying. When you turn that tension back on other people, people really like it. Right. Like, you know, this sounds so arrogant and shitty, but not that I'm like some big person or whatever, but I've had messages. Somebody asked me like a question. They're like, oh, how do you like the Fuji? And I'm like, well, you know, I like this and that. This is okay. I like really love it. And they're like, do you miss film or whatever? And I'm like, a little bit, you know, we'll just talk for a second. And it's nothing really. I'm just kind of like, you know, smoking a cigarette and just kind of barely replying to him. Not that like, that's
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah,
like you're just having a brief discussion.
Right. We're just having a brief talk. And they'll be like, well, I cannot believe that you answered my message. Right. And I'm like, I wonder how many times this person's like messaged somebody and they didn't get a reply back. And then finally they message me and they see like that I have a lot of followers or something or whatever. And they're like, I can't believe this guy like messaged me back. He's like somebody. And the reality is I'm just like in my basketball shorts, sitting outside smoking a cigarette. Like I'm like nobody. I don't even make money from this shit. So I think the more welcoming you are and you try to treat people good, the more like a community you can actually make. But as it gets more popular, it's hard to keep everybody happy. Yeah. And then that's where it like falls apart. But like, if you had asked me, is there really a film community like 2 or 3 years ago? Like, yeah, absolutely. Like these are people that would like, if you put out zines or sold prints, like people were buying them and people still do that, but it's hard to support everybody. Yeah. So people feel excluded from that. And then like it kind of weakens the whole philosophy of like being a community. And as people get more popular, they're less likely to respond to messages and things like that because they think better of themselves. And then that weakens it too. And they become gatekeepers because honestly, like 3 or 4 years ago, you could send a message to pretty much anybody that shot film and ask them about like development or what they thought about certain film stocks or whatever, or cameras. And they would be like, yeah, this is what I like about film. And this is how I do it. And this is how I develop my film. And that's what was the great thing about being into film at the time. And still now to the day in some respects. But like if you message somebody that shoots digital, and they're like, how do you edit your photos? Or what kind of camera you like? Normally you get the response like, oh, the gear doesn't matter. And how you edit your photos doesn't matter. All that matters is you're taking photos. Like, that's bullshit, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that's a bullshit answer. I feel like that is. It's like, they want to know. So just fucking tell them. Don't be a dick about it. If you shoot Sony, be like, I shoot Sony and this is the lens I use. And that's it.
Yeah.
So I've always felt like the film community has been more open, but like the problem, like I said, is like as it grows and gets bigger, that like gets watered down.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I mean, I did the I can't remember what it was. Like, not a GoFundMe. I've become one of those old people now. In lockdown, I've aged like 10 years in 1 year, and I've become one of those old people that uses the wrong word for everything. So like, I'd call Coke Pepsi because the only word I know for that type of drink is Pepsi, that kind of thing. So it wasn't a GoFundMe, but whatever it was a fundraising thing for previous podcast guest, Geraldo, who'd had his camera stolen on his trip home. And the money just flew in. It was amazing to see. The majority of people that donated were outside of photography. They were people that knew him, friends of his, people that had followed him on Instagram, or people that had followed me, that had followed the podcast, and, you know, were really generous. And there were some people that were crazy generous, and it was a bit mind blowing, to be honest with you.
Right.
I'll tell you who didn't donate was a single name that's a big name on YouTube or big or anything like that. And I'll tell you why is because the film community, right? You'd think the film community would be, these guys have had so many people lift them up, and they're not deserving of being lifted up through their work or through their personality or providing something that people want to watch. But they've been lifted up. Why should they put anything back in? And it might be a case that they didn't see that particular GoFundMe or whatever. I can say, because we enjoy the metrics of seeing people who have viewed certain stories, that there were plenty of people that are considered to be relatively successful in terms of their public appearance as a photographer that made no attempt to even contact or share anything like that.
Right.
The community for some people is the big number that comes after their name when it comes to followers, or the big number that comes after when it comes to views or likes or anything like that. Anything that's a self metric, that's when it's a community. But when it's time for people to chip back in, or to maybe, you know, pass stuff down the ladder to help people up, all of a sudden it's not a community anymore. That's people taking advantage of them, or they're just completely blind to it. That's the truth. Sounds mean, but that's the truth.
Right. But I think me and you differ on what we see as the film community. I don't see these like bigger names as the community. They might have a community around them and people that support them. But when I think of the film community, I'm not thinking of them. I'm thinking about the, like, there's probably 100 people right now that I could ask a favor of that I've known through shooting film, and they would like help me out. Uh-huh. That's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference that between like the big names and the people, I don't want to say underneath them, but the people supporting them.
Yeah.
Cause like, that's what I view the film community as. Like, when I did the Restore from Backup thing, we had a Facebook group. I think we had like, I don't know, 700-800 people in the Facebook group. And these people were awesome. They were like, anything you needed help with, they would help you out. But there wasn't like big names in there doing things. It was just the regular people that just hobbyists. Like the guy or the girl shooting film and developing in their basement. Yeah. That's who I'm thinking of. There's a guy, his name is Brian. He's on Twitter and things like that, but he calls himself Film Dad. Right. And he's like an older guy, and he's always got some like dad jokes or whatever, but he's like that kind of guy that I think of when I think of film community. Cause he's like, somebody needed a camera. He's like, oh, I have like, 3 or 4 just sitting around. Like, do they need a camera? I can get them a camera. That kind of, that's the kind of person I'm thinking of when I think of community, not so much like the big dudes or girls.
You're right. We do see it differently in the way that I'm kind of viewing it, and I'm very new to it, so I'm basically wrong. This is the fun part of being new.
You're not wrong. That's how you see it. It's okay.
But I see it as like, and this is going to sound corny as fuck, but bear with me. It's kind of like in the way that you would view a family, in the sense that if you have someone in your family, you are all of the same sort of socioeconomic level, and one person wins the lottery. It's not their responsibility to help everyone out. But if you have someone that's in severe crisis that would have helped you out and has supported you over the years, but now because your number is bigger than their number, you don't feel like you owe them something, or you can turn your back to it. I don't see that as being a good community. And it seems like, and I'm definitely 100% wrong here because I have not got all of the names I can think of in my head right now clear, but it seems like the vast majority of people that start to build up some notoriety, and actually in photography, not just film, as soon as they start to build up some notoriety and they start to kind of go through the gears of becoming more and more prominent, all of a sudden they are completely incapable. And I think it's like you said, that they start to see their numbers go up and they think that they're a bit above it. It's all of like chipping back in or helping people out or answering messages. They think a bit too highly of themselves to do it. And I don't think that's to defend the film fucking community. I don't think it's film that does that. I think that's photography, and probably in most creative arts, when you start to get a little bit of attention, and it just so happens that at the moment social media is the attention that people tend to think is the most valuable, which is complete nonsense. That's when they struggle with ego and their own sort of self-image. Let me ask you a question here. So,
well, hang on. Let me.
Go on.
Good. So I think that's two things. I think I like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're getting a flood of messages every day and it's like overwhelming. Mm-hmm. So that could be one thing. But most of the time, when the people with the least give the most, and I think that's true for anything, especially photography, because once you kind of get it, you're like, well, I've arrived. This is mine now. I earned this. When people really make it, whether it be whatever, anything, it's normally, they don't look at what like got them there. They just looked at like they did that. Like they earned that. So it gives them the right to be whatever way. But I will say, like, if I post something, most of the time it's something when I say something stupid or controversial, I'll have like 6,000-7,000 people look at my Instagram stories, and I'll get like 100, 200 messages. And like, I just can't, normally I open it up, I read it, and I like tap the like button, like to like it, to let somebody know that I've seen it. But I can't respond to everybody when it's like that. Most days I can, because I don't get like a flood of messages. I might get like 15, 20, but like on a day like that, it's hard to like do that. And if every day you're getting 100 messages, it's hard to like respond to them all.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's not like,
oh no, I got you. I like, this is why me and you get along. You're like the British negative version of me, and I'm the positive American.
See, you're color positive. I'm black and white negative. That's how it is.
That's very true. Yes.
That was a terrible pun. You're going to have to kind of take me through this a little bit, because I was very late to the party with all of this, and we spoke through your live you did last week on Instagram, and we've had on top of the last podcast that we did, I think we've maybe had 5 or 6 fairly extensive conversations at one point or another. For people that don't know, we're going to kind of ease our way into this. What is or was Restore from Backup?
So let's see. This is 2021. We started it 2019. It was either 2019, 2020, one of the two. So I started an account with my friend Zach called Restore from Backup. And we wanted to make a features page where we feature photographers. Most of them suck and they just want like attention. And I think that they've like, most of that's true. When somebody's like, they're just doing it for attention, most of the time that is very true. But we wanted to do something different, and we wanted to make a community. And I know you love community. But we made it. We made a Facebook group. We had a website at one time where we were like interviewing people. There's a company called Tog Tees, another photographic supply. They made t-shirts for us. We did a community zine where people submitted photos. We put it together and sold it. We had a Discord. We had a Facebook group, a Twitter. We had all kinds of things. And it grew and grew and grew. And it got to the point to where it had like 58,000 followers on Instagram. And then part of that was Han was with us. She joined us within the first like 6 months and did a lot of heavy lifting as well. So we decided to delete it. This was early this year, 2021. So we deleted it, started over. We did giveaways and things like that. And people would like give us cameras to give away. We did like a holiday giveaway where people gave us zines and donated a bunch of stuff. Static Age zines. He's in the UK. He sent me like a box of stuff, and we based everything off community. So then we decided that we grew so big, but the problem is that the way we grew, a lot of that was through like giveaways and giving away things to people. So of course people followed us. So we decided just to delete it and start over again. So we deleted it, started all over again. And that's it. I did it until 3 months ago. And then I walked away. Han walked away early this year. Then I did. And then about a month later, Zach did. So now it's ran by 2 other people now, Victoria and Edmund.
And in terms of, I mean, people would probably draw parallels, especially in terms of the timing between that folding in the original sense that it was, and then you moving to digital in part. And I think there are people probably, and I was late to the party on this, and I cannot tell you how far I try and get away from pointless drama. And any drama that isn't life-threatening to me is pointless at this point. I think we've had, especially thanks to America, like you guys just don't know when to fuck off with the politics, but thanks to the last few years, everything is the end of the world. Yes. So I'm at the point now where I'm just kind of, can the world just hurry up and end? And until it does actually end, I'm just not going to stress too much over pointless drama. And everything beneath the building I'm in burning down, someone I care about being ill, or me getting hit by a train or something, everything other than that just isn't that big of a deal anymore. Yeah. So were there parallels between I'm gonna be a bit honest here. Is there a parallel between you being a bit disillusioned with film or moving away from film, and Restore from Backup kind of not being of an interest to you anymore?
Yeah, a little bit. I think people lost interest in me a lot. Like the film community is great in a lot of ways, and a lot of ways it like really fucking sucks. And one way that it really fucking sucks is that they don't care what your picture is. They care what you took it with. And if you didn't take it with a film camera, a lot of people, they just don't want anything to do with you. They don't respect that it's made with a digital camera. They see that as being inferior. They don't want anything to do with digital photos. They're strictly film and film only, which is fine. I felt the same way too. I felt the same way until I got my Fuji this time last year. If somebody took a photo with digital, I saw it as like not cheap, but like it just didn't have the same feeling to it. And it's stupid. It's just kind of stupid because the person's work is the same. So I noticed this when I got the Fuji, I posted like a couple of photos, and I'm like, oh, I really like this thing. And people in our Facebook group were like, this doesn't belong here. You can't post these photos here. And I'm like, well, to be honest, in my fucking group, I'll kind of post what I want to do, But then I was like, then somebody was like, there's like people that shoot both. And they were like, well, how about if you post a digital photo, you just say like, it's digital. Like you say what it is so people know what it is. And so we did that. And like that caused like a major divide. Like I ran a poll and I'm like, oh, should we allow digital photos in our Facebook group? And it was like pretty much 50-50. I think it was like 55-45 and the film only won. So that's what it was. But like, I noticed right then, like as I've had people on like people that I followed back and supported and bought their prints and their zines from and like all kinds of stuff. I've had people unfollow me when I switched to digital, or maybe they unfollow me because I ran my mouth and said something stupid, which is possible too, which is probably quite possible. But I noticed when I started posting digital photos, I lost a lot of people, and like that doesn't bother me. what bothers me is these like some of these people were like people that I like supported and I liked. So it was like it wasn't so much like, oh no, I lost followers. Like, no, it was more like I lost some people that like I liked. Like I don't want to call them friends or whatever, but I knew them as acquaintances and I liked their work. So I clearly, just because I took it with a digital photo, like my style hasn't changed. Like the way I shoot.
For sure, looking at it like from an outside perspective, and I'm one of the most reluctant photographers going in the sense that I can't stand conversations about would you buy this lens or that lens, which prime is right for you, why Nikon is better than Canon or whatever. I can't stand any of those conversations. If you ask me about why I use something, I can give you a very clear answer, and I'm more than happy to help out when I'm asked a specific question. But if you want to try and piss up my leg and tell me that this camera system's better than that one, you go for it. You have fun. You do what you want to do. I'm not going to argue with you. If that's what, if that's what kind of tickles your bollocks, then you go for it. That's your thing. But it's just, it does nothing for me. But that being said, it says something from a very outside perspective that film is so different from digital that people would need the label to be put on the image to avoid liking something if it was taken with the wrong medium. It shows you a real issue with people's motivation, because rather than just like the picture because they like the picture, they need to work out whether or not they're allowed to like it. Because if it's the wrong medium, they're somehow betraying their own principles. But they're by identifying the fact that they need to have it pointed out to them, they're kind of admitting that their principles are kind of stupid anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, you see this like all the time. Like I'm not as involved with them as now, but they're my friends, so I chip in and we talk all the time. But like I started Season Film, which was going to be another account like Restore from Backup, and actually I got like I don't know. I'm on my third. I just started a new one the other day. But anyways, my friend Nick shared a photo, and it happened to be digital on Season Film, and it's supposed to be all film, no digital photos. And somebody's like, I like this photo a lot, but I'm just letting you know that it's film or it's digital.
Right.
And it's like, well, we made a mistake. It's like, whatever. But they like to point that shit out, and I get it. Like if it's supposed to be film only and you share something that's not film only, that'd be like if you have an account and it's all portraits and then somebody shows a picture of a landscape and they're like, well, this doesn't belong here because it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
But like, it's so broad. Like, I don't see why it matters. I really don't. As time gone on, I don't see why it matters. And then like this new thing I started, like, I don't give a shit if you took it with a iPhone. I don't care what you took it with. Cause I did the same thing. As soon as I switched to Fuji, I'm like, oh, I need a Fuji account cause there's like Fuji X Passion and like Fuji Love or something like that. And that's it. But like, I wanted to make like a Restore from Backup with Fuji, but they're like the digital community has a different mindset than like the film community. But maybe it's just because like,
well, explain that. Explain how they have a different mindset.
I think that most digital people don't care what you took it with. Like, right. I don't think they care that if like a film is like a photo's film or it's digital or whatever. I don't think most of these people don't seem to care if you like overly edit it or you don't edit it at all or anything. I think they just like photography. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that like me that like film too, that feel the same way. But there's a lot of people that are like, but I've never heard somebody that shoots digital be like, film's not welcome here type of thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, and a lot of them like, I don't know. It's hard to say. Cause it's like I think it may be just like the way we're at right now, but everybody's like, oh, being inclusive and stuff like that. But you're like excluding like a whole group of people that like photography, just saying that you don't like digital.
Yeah. But I think the digital side of things, to me, I come obviously from the digital side of things. I learned digital photography first. I still shoot significantly more digitally than I do with film. And when it comes to film photos, if I get one good one out of every 5 rolls, I'd be pretty chuffed. The difference with the digital community is, you're right. I think they're more positive in a lot of sense. And there's one thing for sure with digital photography. If someone asks you what you use to take a picture and it's digital, they're asking because they like the picture and they want whatever it is that got you to that result. Whereas when someone asks you what you shot it with from the film side, I've noticed quite often they have a reason why you shouldn't have, or why something else would have worked better, or what they would have used instead. And that side of it can be, that's what I found the least accessible for me. I have to say, I've been extremely blessed with having the podcast and then trying to learn film photography, because I've managed to find, and through people like yourself, including yourself being one of those people, managed to find lots of photographers that have all been extremely helpful, either in information they've given or just the work they produce, the information that they give out to the general public anyway. But the amount of people that will answer questions that I have at 3 a.m, and I'm just like, I can't figure out my arse from my elbow, and they help me out through with no, they don't get anything back for helping. They're just nice people. There's a lot of that with film. I think, you kind of nailed it earlier. There's a lot of, you don't like to say the lower end, but the people that aren't trying to be notorious are very helpful. And they have a lot of time for each other. And that's really wonderful. With digital, my downside with digital, and this is a really bizarre one, and this is my absolute bugbear at the moment with photography, is that they will accept the shittest photos as being good, provided they can see BTS of it being shot. So there's one particular photographer in England, and I don't care what anyone says. Everyone wants to pretend that they're this like Mary Poppins. They fucking love everyone, but they don't. There are people that annoy you, and you don't even have a good reason for why they annoy you. And there's this one guy in England. He takes these incredibly, they're so middle of the road. They're just nothing photos. They would never stop someone in their tracks. If you were flipping through a magazine, they would look out of place because they're mundane. There's nothing interesting about them. But he puts out incredibly detailed BTS of everything that he's doing. No matter how crap the pictures are, that he gets like thousands of people telling him how great he is, or how fascinating he is, or what, it's so interesting to see what led to the shot. And the BTS now is more interesting than the final product. And I think this is where digital is very different from film. Film photographers love the results, right? They love the look of 400H, or they love the look of portrait, or they love the look of the black and whites, the way that you get different, like a lot of digital black and whites, people just click black and white on Lightroom and then fuck off. They don't put a lot of thought into it. With film, they love the results. With digital, I think they really like the process. They like being a photographer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I see it oppositely.
Come on, now you're just picking on me.
No. I see people like film for the process. That's why I like film. I like loading the film up. I like, you take it, you don't know what you got, and you have to wait for it. I think a lot of film photographers like the process of that. But are you talking about James? Is his name James? The guy you're talking about?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm thinking of another English YouTuber. His name's James. I love his stuff.
This guy's not on YouTube as far as I'm now I'm going to search. I'm going to find out he is, and it's going to piss me off even more. But no, it's not James. This guy, I follow this guy, James. I love his stuff, but he's like funny, and he's like you said, he's like, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff and things like that. But yeah, like I think digital people, like, they just like gear. It's like gear. This is the latest camera. My God, I've just Googled the guy, and he actually has a YouTube channel. So you've just pissed me off. I could have lived happily without knowing that this guy that I don't like has... Oh man, that's you've successfully ruined my day. I hope you're happy.
Well, I am. Yeah, you have to message me his name so I can look at him. Yeah, I think that a lot of digital is gear. Which is, it's funny about like what I've noticed with digital stuff is, like, even myself, like, I got this X-T4. I love it. It's like, as soon as I got it and I've gotten comfortable with it, I'm like, maybe I should get like a GFX 100S.
Right.
And like, you're like kind of looking to like that next thing. Yeah. And with film, I did the same thing. I mean, last year I probably bought like 15, 16 cameras that year. And now I've sold everything.
I've never known someone in my life. I have to make one confession about you. Like I think in the time I've known you, which is only like a little bit over a year, you have told me at least 3 times that that's it. This is the camera I'm going with going forwards. And then, like, within days, there'll be a new post on your Instagram saying, I got this now. So this, and I'm like, what? How did that change in like 4 days?
I get a lot of shit for that. Trust me. if I get shit for something, that's probably it. Cause like the other day I was like, does anybody have a Leica 240? If so, how do you like it? Like, I don't know. I like cameras, but now I only have this in my RB67. I've sold everything. I sold my Rolleiflex, everything. So I only have one digital and one film. That's all I got.
And you got the wrong digital as well, because although you did get the XT4, you bought the all black one, which is the least good looking one.
Yeah, well, that's debatable. I got the right lens though. I love this 35 f1.4. It's got a good look to it.
Yeah, especially having shot weddings with the Fuji stuff, I know that the best lens Fuji make is the 16mm 1.4 by a country mile. That is the best lens they make. Like, if there was one lens I could pull out of that system and use on any other camera, that's the one lens I would take by just an absolute mile. There's plenty of nice lenses in there, but when I decided to sort of bite the bullet and go back and have a Fuji just for my own personal stuff, I messaged you straight away and I was like, hey, you shoot Fuji. You're now the Fuji ambassador of my Instagram feed. What say you about a lens? And you gave me the advice. And I was actually on a bike at the gym at the time, and I bought the lens while I was talking to you because of your recommendation. And that's again another sign of how good the community side of photography can be, where you can actually go to someone that you trust their opinion, and someone like you can answer straight away. But here's the proof I have for why I'm right about the process versus the results and digital versus film.
Okay.
I literally can't tell you a single person I know of who shoots digitally that's released a zine.
This is true.
Right? They'll shoot and they'll shoot and they'll shoot and they'll shoot and they'll shoot. And they'll never release anything. And then you get people that will go out with 3 rolls of film and they'll get 5 zines out of it somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've already said something because I'm like, at the coach, I was like, I'm going to shoot black and white only this like month. And I'm already thinking like, maybe at the end I should put together a zine of the black and white photos.
Well, then you'd be the only person I know that shoots digital and does a zine, and I would buy it because I'm a good person.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Not many people will. I'm going to have to put a disclaimer on it. These photos are not film. These are digital. So
yeah, you'll get people buy it and then complain. That's the way we work. That's a capitalist world.
For every person that has left me because I don't shoot digital anymore, another Fuji person has replaced them. So it's like a revolving door of people leaving and coming. Yeah.
Well, I got shared for the first time by an actual film company.
Nice.
I had an image of mine shared by a film company, and I think I gathered about 100 followers immediately from that, which is very nice. And then I was telling my wife, and I said, because I really couldn't give, and I mean this nicely, but I couldn't give the slightest fuck about followers and things like that. It just doesn't mean anything to me. If you have 3 people like your photo, that's amazing. Like 3 people liking something you've done that they have no obligation to like it. That's really nice. And the appreciation for that doesn't go up with more numbers. And I don't think that the photo is better with more numbers because, I think the world record highest liked image on Instagram is an egg. So it's just like a random stock image of an egg. So, it's all bullshit at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because like, if you think of it in terms of like putting these people in a room and like, I probably have like 100 to 200 people that like constantly, no matter what I do, will like support me. Mm-hmm. And like, I'll do the same for them. Anytime they got something, I'll return the favor. But if you get 200 people in a room, that's a lot of fucking people.
Yeah.
You gotta like think of it like that. Cause somebody was saying like, I was bitching the other day and cause like Instagram's like a wave. And it really does make you feel like when you post something and it does terrible, you're like, maybe this photo is not good. And like, that's part of it's probably true. But part of it's just like, well, this is just how social media is. And not everything has to like go viral per se. But still like 400 or 500 people liking a photo that's a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, I went through a phase, especially when I started photography, where I would post a picture that I took, and it was usually crap, and it was usually with some horrendous editing. And my mum would send me a list of what was wrong with the photo. you know?
Nice.
So that was my gauge of feedback. And I remember one image, I knew I'd made it as a photographer when my mum sent me a message that said, I quite like that model. That was it. I was like, okay, so she hasn't said it's shit. I'll take it. That's as good as it's going to get. I've reached the top of the mountain. I think you're right. You know, I've watched quite a lot of philosophical kind of YouTube videos lately and read a lot of articles, and I've been on an absolute binge of buying photo books.
Yeah, I saw you picked up some good ones. Gordon Parks, Vivian Mayer. This is some good ones.
Yeah, I mean, as far as street photography goes, I know next to nothing. And having those books lying around are definitely going to help me educate myself. The William Eggleston stuff, honestly, is my favorite. And although I'll never be that kind of photographer, I think you should enjoy something that you don't do. Like that's one thing people get way too buried in, is like they only look at photography that is the kind of photography they wish they were doing.
Right.
You can get inspired by stuff outside of what you want to be doing. You should be inspired by it. But this idea that you need to be immediately validated by other people or your work is no good, that's like the most toxic thing, I think, for someone that's trying to learn something, someone that's trying to find their identity with something that they're creating, is to think that whether or not you did something worthwhile is dependent on other people approving of it. Especially when you look at, I mean, how many photographers get found after the fact, or artists that get found way after they've gone, or their work becomes popular when years and years after it's produced. Just take photos that mean something to you, and then everything else after that is just gravy.
Yeah. Do you own Modern Color? Do you own that book yet?
I don't think I do.
Yeah, no. That's my favorite photo book. Before I forget to tell you, Fred is all Modern Color, just perfect.
Actually, saying that, yeah, I do. I actually do.
That's my favorite.
Last week, when I say I went on a binge, I was getting about 4 to 5 books delivered a day. So
nice.
Yeah,
there you go.
I'm still working my way through them, obviously.
Yep. There's like somebody said that before, like a photo book will do you better than any kind of lens or any kind of new camera that you can buy. Like you'll get way more out of a photo book than you will a new piece of gear. So I like the hunt. I like that's what I liked about film cameras. It was like the hunt for like the perfect one. Like after I had my mind, I'm like, I want this. And now I'm going to go on like a 2-week hunt to find a perfect one. And then when it arrives, I put 4 or 5 rolls to it and sell it on to the next one. But you got to take everything what I say with a grain of salt. Cause I'm like, I'm super like, I get these things in my head and it's like, I want to do this and this is my goal. I'm going to do this. And then I do it and I'm like, okay, on to the next thing. Yeah. Like when I got my Fuji, I was like, I want to be a Fuji X photographer. And then I hit them up and they're like, oh, we could like let you loan a X100V and you could be a Fuji collaborator. And I talked to Fuji on the phone for a while and they like followed me on social media. And then after it happened, I'm like, okay, I don't want to do this no more. I'm like, on to the next thing. I just like to do things to know that I could do it, even though I don't try to take it too serious. And then I'm like off to the next thing.
It's an experience as opposed to being an entire identity.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I make it my identity for about 6 months and then I totally change personalities.
And that's fine. You're insane and that's fine. We love you for it. That's what you can be. I think we could probably talk for 10 hours straight and go through every subject known to man, but I feel like we should probably draw a line under it there and save something for the next time. Most important thing, as always, is that I point as many people as possible in your direction. So please tell me your Instagram, website, your OnlyFans, anywhere that you want people to go to find what you do.
I'm on OnlyFans at Butt Cheek Butter. That's not true at all.
Do not search that.
Butt Cheek Butter. No, I'm Jaser, JASER.Hunter. If you've liked Restore from Backup and what I did before, I started another little project a while ago. It's anybody's welcome. It's called 2 Hour Photo. I'm trying to like reach out to people and have them tell me about themselves and then share a series of photos versus like picking a photo from a pool. I'm trying to do it like a little bit extra and make it like a little bit more special. So you really learn about somebody just instead of just one photo that's out of context with a name behind it. But that's pretty much, I have a Fuji mag and season film, but I really don't do too much with those anymore. So it's pretty much just these two now, my personal work and that.
Well, I feel like as well, following you is great value for money because, like you said, you change personality so much. You get lots of different people for just the one follow. It's great. That's the best part about it. You're almost like your personal account is almost like a feature account for all of your different personalities. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I try to not be a gatekeeper and share whatever catches my eye. I'll share it in my stories and other people's work. You know, it's like a catch-22. I could talk to you about that on another podcast about how social media is and like how people portray things and twist things and things like that. Because nobody believes anything. Nobody believes people just do things out of the goodness of their heart. And that's made me kind of negative. And now I'm back to being positive again. I switched personalities.
Well, like I said to you a while back, we want to get you guest hosting so that people don't have to listen to my voice. They can listen to yours and you can bring someone new into the fold.
I would love that. That's like my biggest problem that I found is no shit talk to the people that are my friends that have helped me with projects and stuff. But the problem is that like, I like to hit things hard and go for it. And I've noticed that some people want to just dip their toes into things. But I've been wanting to start a podcast for years. I just don't have the right person to do it with me.
Well, they can go and check out your OnlyFans and then see what they think of you from there, because you certainly don't dip your toe in there. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me, and we'll see you soon.
Yep, of course. Thanks for having me.
I'm a selfish kind of person.